I don't know. It's well.
Want me to start?
You know what? You start
I
because
will.
it's changed so much that it's knocked me for a loop.
Yeah.
I don't know what to
Well,
ask.
Obviously, here's a good $100 word. The ubiquity of the animated stuff has changed a lot because when Mo and I started, and before you guys were born, many of you, there was nothing but ABC, CBS, and NBC network Saturday morning cartoons. The occasional local channel would have syndicated cartoons, but no DVDs, no video games, no satellite, no HBO had hardly started, right? So to that extent, there's a lot more product and a lot more need for product. My process and what I do hasn't changed at all. I try to hone my skills and work on what it is that I know is in my wheelhouse and helps me get work. The technical aspect of it has changed like crazy. I go to work in studios in which I've worked now on and off for 30 plus years, and there are old Ampex machines gathering dust, 8-track tape, T-A-P-E, tape machines gathering dust. And so, the days of you do a recording and do a take on something, and the producer would say, okay, I like the first half of this line and the last half of that line. So the guy would say, okay, great. He'd take the tape and splice it and put it together, and then back and forth, and then you'd hear. Now it's all instantaneous, no tape. So technically it's changed. It's like night and day.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I do, hasn't changed.
I was going to actually I was thinking about more the way the content has changed and the type of characters that we're playing. I was just stuck for a second there. I don't want to say dirtier. That's not because that's a judgment. But I think there's just a lot more freedom in terms of content. You can address more adult issues, and you can be racy. This didn't happen when we started out in the 1980s. Cartoons were very controlled, so the kind of characters you got to portray were very safe, I guess is the word we're looking for. We were always trying to find the edge. I think on Real Ghostbusters, we started trying to tell some adult stories. The goal on Real Ghostbusters way back in 1985 was to tell each episode had to make a decent Ghostbusters 2. So we did do some, the characters got into some dating situations and they were, very sophisticated. So there's a sophistication in storytelling. There's a more naturalistic style now in casting. Mm-hmm. Rick and Morty, just Justin Roiland has just turned everything about casting that when I came along that I was taught when I came along on its ear. Enunciate, don't overlap, all that. Justin will do characters that stammer, and stammer and burp in the middle of lines, and it's like, great. I don't have to be perfect anymore.
Organic,
It's very organic. It's exactly the word I'm looking for. So that has changed.
But if I can interject very quickly, especially you're talking about content, certainly, and it was all by design. Animaniacs in particular had a relatively subversive sense of humor, and it was written that way on purpose because Steven and Tom Ruegger and Gene McCurdy and all, they were all fans of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Looney Tunes, and it was purposely written to be appeal to people on different levels and have very sophisticated jokes and timely jokes. But the proof is in the pudding because now it's on Netflix and it's huge again. And a lot of you folks who are 8, 9, 10 years old and dug the fact that Wacko would smack the nutball on the head with a big mallet, laughed at that, and now you watch it with grown-up eyes and you go, oh my God, fingerprints? Fingerprints? Are you kidding me? I don't think so. Well, that was all by design. So that started to happen a lot, and that was relatively new to do that 20-odd years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
Me.
about that?
The origin is me. I am all of those burps. How wonderful you would ask
Do
me
you guys
this.
know what he's talking about? You will soon. It's crazy.
That is, first of all, it's not an actual burp. It's an effect a vocal effect that hurts. It's sort of it's almost Tuvan depth throat rasping, coupled with sort of a marble-mouthed kind of turning of the tongue like this.
Like a Jessel.
So it's almost like George Joseph. And you do this, and you do this, and it becomes, and then you try to get it deeper.
What? And give up show business?
Yeah, exactly. And there are monks that come to me and go, "How do you do that?"
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
No, it's crazy, man.
So it's something I've been doing since I was a little kid. Since I was about the 5th grade, I bought my first plastic puke, at a novelty store back when they had novelty stores, and I thought to myself before I try to drop this in the middle of class as a prank, I got to think of a sound to go with it. Even back then, I was thinking in terms of sounds. I'm hampered. This drives my wife nuts because we're shopping for a house, and she's always trying to tell me the changes she wants to make in the house. I have a terrible visual imagination. I cannot picture things that she's telling me to pick. If this wall comes out here, that's meaningless to me. But I always think in terms of sound. There's more of my brain devoted to what things sound like and what people sound like. And I thought to myself, even then, this has to have a special sound. So I did that. I turned my tongue inside out, rasped my voice as loud as I could, dropped the puke, and the teacher was convinced that I needed to go to the nurse's office. And then I went, ha ha, ha ha, it's a joke. And I ended up going to the principal's office instead.
And then subsequent psychiatrist. So.
That's of course.
No, it's a remarkable thing. I remember doing Animaniacs, and when Yakko does that, Blue Danube.
Right.
Da, 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 da. It's fantastic.
We actually sang those in key.
Yeah.
Or burped them in key, but we also sampled a whole bunch of burps, including a couple of genuine burps. And Rich Stone, God rest his soul, our musical director, put them on a keyboard. So it's literally a burp keyboard.
Crazy.
So, crazy.
Thank you.
That's the story of the burp. And now you know the rest of the story. You guys are all too young to remember Paul Harvey, aren't you?
I know, God.
This is what happens. This is what it's
you.
like to get old. All
Thanks,
your
Jake.
references become meaningless to the next generation. The smoother the skin gets out there, the more you go, don't even talk about the mighty Hercules. Yeah, exactly. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Actually, probably too young to remember. What was you guys' first gig, first voice acting gig?
We each had different ones. We didn't meet until Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. That was our first. That was our first time working together, and I knew as soon as I met this guy. It's how they love at first sight. It was voice actor love at first sight.
I'm crazy about him.
I got to work with this guy forever because we started. I don't know whether it was a Derek and Clive bit or a Python bit, but I started to riff.
Yeah.
Which started Rob Paulsen laughing, and he finished it. He finished the line. I couldn't quite remember how it was, and he finished it.
So
and then
we
we
were
just
kindred
we
spirits.
started just every time we came in, it would be a new Monty Python sketch that each of us knew, and so from there. But in terms of individual first gigs, what was your first gig?
My first job.
What was the worst job you ever had? I think that was the way we started actually. The Peter Cook, Dudley Moore. Worst job you ever. What was the first job you ever had?
The first. Well, I went to LA ostensibly to do live action, and that's what I was hired for. I was doing, commercials and episodic television and a million average-looking young white guys who, boy next door kind of stuff. But the first cartoons I did were G.I. Joe and Transformers. I played a character called Snow Job on G.I. Joe, who was a...
the mind boggles at what that would be like.
Totally. Who was an Alpine soldier with all the white stuff. And then on Transformers, I came in about halfway through, and they introduced these characters that were called aerial bots, and I was Slingshot and Air Raid. Those are the first cartoons I did, and it didn't take long to realize that is the gig, because unless you're a celebrity or you're a regular on a series or something, just being able to make a living, there's a huge area between being, eating out of a trash can and being Brad Pitt. there's unfortunately Mo and I have found that sweet spot where we're able to put braces on our kids' teeth and buy houses and cars like normal people. And the great thing about animation is nobody cares what I look like. So it didn't take long after those for me to really dive into that. And I think Mo and I got very fortunate to come when animation was really starting to boom because all these new platforms needed product.
For me, the very first thing I ever did, animation-wise, very, very first, was back in Canada for a company called Nelvana Films, and it was called Take Me Up to the Ball. No, sorry, that was the second one, Easter Fever. And it was with Garrett Morris as the Easter Bunny.
Oh my God.
And it was a roast, and you can see it on YouTube. Both these things are on YouTube now. It was a roast of the Easter Bunny, and I played Steed Martin, a wild and crazy horse, and Don Rattles. Who is
Rattlesnake?
Don Rickles is a rattlesnake. You got a problem with that? Anyway, gang.
Okay, Puck.
So those, and then I ended up doing like 3 or 4 more characters as we went along because they discovered this facility I had for doing voices. I was doing stand-up comedy at a place called Yuck Yucks Comedy Club in Toronto, where Jim Carrey started, Norm Macdonald, Howie Mandel. So that was those were the very first 2 things I did. My very first American series was Inspector Gadget, where I got to be the chief. So, and work alongside Maxwell Smart.
How cool is
and
that?
hear all the great stories that he had about the making of Get Smart. And, I bought the DVD box set of the entire series, and every time you listen to the commentary, I just went, yeah, Don told me that one personally in the kitchen. In the kitchen at B&B Studios. I know that one about Don. Rickles and I were chained to a wall the entire morning, and they went for lunch and left us chained to the wall because we wouldn't stop laughing and they couldn't get the take. When they came back from lunch an hour later, we were still chained to the wall laughing. So
You can't buy that
great
stuff,
stories, and that was I just thought to myself, like Rob, wait a second, okay, I've been on the road for 5 years as a stand-up comic. I said, I sit in a chair, the lines are in front of me, I don't have to memorize them, it doesn't matter whether I've shaved or not, and I just read the words, and you send me a check?
And then I work with
Oh my God, and I get to work with
Don Adams?
Maxwell
You kidding me?
Smart?
Yeah.
This is amazing. So
best job in the world.
I continued doing stand-up for a few years, but I thought, this is the greatest job in the world. I just only want to do this. And, Real Ghostbusters came on the heels of that, and it was just off and running.
Jokes you're thinking about?
No, I haven't done stand-up. Really, I gave it up. I tried to come back to it. I gave it up in 1987. I didn't mean to give it up, but if it's online, it's not private. My father was murdered in 1987, and I really lost any desire to really get out on the stage and make people laugh, because his pride in me was really what motivated me. There was but I got back into it, and then another tragedy occurred. My sister was killed in a car accident, and then, and little by little, I just kind of felt like, what, I'm really rolling a stone uphill here. So, where I get my Jones now for making crowds laugh is working with this man.
Oh man.
Doing his podcast at live venues like the Improv, or coming out to a Comic-Con like this, where we get several hundred people come out. We just tell stories. Every time we tell a story, it gets a laugh. That's my stand-up Jones. That's that, because the laughter is almost food to me, So I get to do that. It's one of the curses of voiceover work, is that we can be having a great time and riffing and cracking everybody up behind the glass, but they're behind the glass, so I can only see the laughter, not hear it. And I love that sound. So, so that's where I get my sort of comedy Jones now. We just talk freely and openly about our lives and play off of each other.
I love Maurice, and we're just such dear friends, and the opportunity to do this kind of stuff. I think being around as long as we have, and we're in a real good sweet spot now. We're old enough to have really significant work, but we're young enough to come around and enjoy it. And you guys, oh my God, we can't even tell you how much we appreciate the fact that, all we have to do is, Narf, and you do that. You do that. It's the most endearing, sweet, wonderful thing, and it is unquantifiable in terms of what it does for us.
Yeah.
So we're so grateful, and we utterly get how fortunate we are. And if we can come around and share, especially, it just seems like day after day after day, and I know you get beat down, more than ever. You try to find ways to just laugh and make yourself laugh, and we've been fortunate to work on not only a lot of stuff, but some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Futurama.
Quality writing.
Yeah.
It's really,
God.
I mean, even though it's animation, the writing, the stories, and the characters are what separates the men from the boys, the primetime stuff from, some of the less substantial stuff.
And Mo says it too. It is among the most collaborative of mediums.
Not that I want to stop working in Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, no,
I love that stuff.
we love
I'm just
working.
saying, clever writing is really
Well, and that's
been
what-
very, very lucky to be part of that.
Yeah, that's what the fact that Animaniacs is kicking ass on Netflix.
Yeah.
Is a real great example of that. People love Animaniacs on Netflix. It's doing fantastic numbers, and but as I mentioned earlier, it is a really uber collaborative medium. We don't draw them and we don't write them, and we're the ones often that get the glory. But it's
Yeah.
it's a remarkable medium, and it's just getting more and more sophisticated, and more and more platforms. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime are all going to be having animated shows coming up. They know. And also, pardon me, these conventions are popping up like zits on a 13-year-old, man. It's crazy. It used to be Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con and Dragon Con. Everybody's got a con. It's fantastic. And the size of the audience is just unbelievable. And it's just a joy to be part of it.
Yep.
Great. Right here.
Sort of where you were saying earlier about like Animaniacs, it was a very smart show for its time, or
Yeah.
depending on your perspective.
Sure.
But I will still say that that comedy, and y'all are partly responsible for that. It influenced the way I grew up and made me part of my sense of humor. So you owe my mom an apology for the way I turned out.
Well, you're not
We're
in jail,
sorry,
the day's not
Mom.
over yet.
Yeah.
No, listen, the same thing. But I remember watching Rocky and Bullwinkle and Fractured Fairy Tales and
That was
Fractured
some
Flicker.
subversive stuff.
Very.
Yes.
And watching my dad would get a kick, or Looney Tunes, same thing. The Roadrunner would go off the cliff, and I would laugh. But I didn't get all the hip cultural references until I got a bit older, and that was all by design. But I absolutely take that as a badge of honor when a young person like you says, "Oh my God, you helped shape our sense of humor." And you're right, we did have a part in that, but it was all as a result. None of it gets done, first of all, without Mr. Spielberg. None of it. The opportunity to do that show with that music, with a 40-piece orchestra for every half hour, never happens.
Yep.
And Mr. Spielberg and Tom Ruger and Gene McCurdy, the people who are responsible at the studio level. But when you get Steven to come in and say, "All right, we're going to do this. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it like this," and man, did it ever pay dividends. People still love you. United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, and it was all done every half hour with a giant orchestra. So if Yakko climbs up the steps of the water tower, the percussionist is watching the screen going, and it's just fantastic. So thank you. Sorry.
It was
Thank you.
Thank you for calling me young.
It was
Younger
recorded.
than I.
The orchestra was recorded in the same
Oh yeah.
soundstage that Carl Stalling
Did all the-
recorded all the Bugs Bunny cartoons back in the 1940s
Same
and 50s.
piano.
Same piano, same room, same
Yeah.
wood on the walls. So when you went to a music session, as we were both lucky to do, you felt like you'd stepped inside a cartoon.
Crazy.
It literally had the same resonance as all the cartoons I watched growing up, all those Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes.
And all the players and all the tech people who were all there in the studio running the show were as starstruck by the whole thing as we were. Like they were going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm playing French horn in the same studio that a French hornist played on, you know, kill the wabbit, kill
Yeah,
the wabbit.
right.
It blew their minds.
Yeah.
So everybody had that total fan vibe. It was great.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot.
guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.